2025, we finally got a movie adaptation of Stephen King's novel, The Long Walk. In this video, we'll be diving into 20 behind-the-scenes facts you probably didn't know, like how far the actors actually walked during filming, and what changes had to be made to the novel to make it work on screen. But first, let's refresh our memories with a quick movie recap. In a dystopian America where the population is controlled by the military, young boys are forced to participate in a live annual contest where they must keep walking until they physically can't no more. The rage-fueled Ray and the chronically upbeat Pete team up, hoping that one of them will make it to the end. They know exactly what happens if you fail, but the winner is promised a huge cash prize and anything they wish for. Ray wants a gun so he can kill the Major, the poster boy of the Long Walk. Pete thinks that's the dumbest idea he's ever heard, but there's not much he can do about it. After most of the contestants are killed off for being slow slugs and not being able to walk for a few days without sleeping, only Ray and Pete remain. Pete offers to give Ray the win, but Ray tells him to keep walking. Pete does, and Ray stops, intentionally getting himself shot. Furious, Pete claims his prize. He asks for a gun, shoots the Major, and keeps walking. So now that we've refreshed our memory on what The Long Walk is about, let's jump right into the facts. Number 1. To make the suffering feel believable, the production didn't rely on movie tricks. Filming took place on long, open roads, and the actors were required to actually walk for hours at a time while performing their scenes. Many of them logged between 25,000 and 30,000 steps per day, sometimes even more. By the end of filming, the exhaustion you see on screen isn't acting, it's real fatigue. In the movie, The Long Walk ends at the 331st mile, which is about 532 kilometers. But during production, the actors actually walked farther than that. Over the course of filming, they ended up covering almost 400 miles, or roughly 643 kilometers. That physical strain bleeds directly into the performances, making the pain, frustration, and emotional breakdowns feel disturbingly real. Number 2. In the book, the sheer number of walkers creates a sense of industrialized death. Boys disappear constantly, almost casually. The movie shifts that feeling by reducing the number of participants from 100 to just 50, one representing each state. Instead of death feeling inevitable and anonymous, it becomes widely televised and starts to resemble an exhausted version of Big Brother. Every character carries narrative weight, and every death is given proper build-up. You're not shocked when someone dies because you can see it coming, but you're powerless to stop it. This transforms the walk from a statistical nightmare into an emotional one, which is far more effective in a movie format. Number 3. The Long Walk is one of Stephen King's oldest stories, and for decades, Hollywood had no idea what to do with it. The novel was written when King was just 19, and it's almost entirely psychological. There are no big action scenes, no clear villain, and no sense of hope, which made studios nervous. Even legendary director George Romero tried to adapt it at one point and couldn't figure out how to translate such an internal story to the screen. That's why the 2025 version is such a big deal. It's the first adaptation that didn't try to soften the story or turn it into a blockbuster. It fully committed to the bleakness. Number 4. Most movies are shot completely out of sequence, but The Long Walk could not afford to do that. This story is about slow psychological erosion, not sudden trauma. By filming in chronological order, the cast experiences the same emotional arc as their characters. Early scenes feel lighter, more talkative, almost hopeful. As the shoot progresses, conversations shorten, silences stretch, and irritation becomes constant. What's important here is that this decay isn't manufactured in editing, it's organic. The actors aren't pretending to lose patience or emotional energy. They're actually running out of it. That mirrors the novel perfectly, where the horror doesn't come from sudden violence, but from watching normal human behavior slowly fall apart. Number 5. Again, in the book, these boys had to walk 4 miles an hour, which is over 6 kilometers per hour. The average walking speed is between 3 to 4 miles, which means that the walking speed itself killed most walkers. They changed this in the movie and made it 3 miles per hour. Lowering the required speed isn't just a technical fix, it reframes the horror. At 4 miles per hour, the walk becomes physically impossible, which shifts the audience's focus to logistics. At a slightly slower pace, the danger becomes mental instead of mechanical. The walkers aren't failing because the rules are absurd. They're failing because exhaustion, fear, injury, and despair slowly destroy their ability to continue. That change keeps the audience focused on human limits, not math. Number 6. In Stephen King's novel, The Long Walk doesn't really end, it just stops. Ray technically wins, but there's no relief, no victory. His mind is completely broken. He keeps walking, hallucinating a dark figure ahead of him, unable to even process that it's over. The movie takes a very different approach. Instead of Garrity winning, the film has him give up, allowing Peter McVries to survive. And that one change completely reframes the story. Winning is no longer about endurance, it's about sacrifice. McVries then uses his wish, which the book barely explores, to kill the Major, the man who represents the system behind the walk. For the first time, the horror isn't just internal. So where the book ends with existential collapse, the movie ends with moral consequence. Number 7. Another important change the movie makes is aging the walkers up slightly. In Stephen King's novel, some of the boys are shockingly young. We're talking mid to late teens, barely out of childhood. On the page, that's horrifying. It makes the walk feel like a blunt instrument of cruelty. Kids being fed into a system that doesn't care if they're ready or not. The film ages the characters up just enough to allow more nuanced performances and heavier conversations. These aren't kids stumbling into horror, they're young men who understand exactly what the walk is, what it costs, and how little chance they actually have. It also deepens the moral weight of the story. When these characters keep walking, it's not just fear driving them, it's their responsibility that the country put upon them to survive. Number 8. The Long Walk wasn't made with blockbuster money, and honestly, that limitation might be the best thing that ever happened to it. With a bigger budget, there would have been pressure to add spectacle. Because the budget is tight, the movie leans almost entirely on faces, bodies, and time. Long takes, awkward silences, conversations that trail off because the characters are too tired to finish them. There's nowhere for the camera to hide, and nowhere for the audience to rest. That monotony is the point. It makes the viewer experience the same psychological trap the walkers are stuck in. Number 9. One of the most important choices the filmmakers made was where to shoot The Long Walk. The movie was filmed in rural Manitoba, Canada, with long stretches shot in places like Birds Hill Provincial Park. And this wasn't just about finding a quiet road. Manitoba gives you these endless, flat horizons, gray skies, and wide open spaces that feel empty and unforgiving. That emptiness mirrors the walk itself. The land just keeps going, and so do the boys. What's interesting is that the environment almost becomes another antagonist. The road doesn't look dramatic or cinematic, it looks boring, and that's exactly the point. The walk isn't meant to feel exciting, it's meant to feel endless. There is one funny thing about this though. The movie is supposed to be about America, but they couldn't find a perfect location to film there. Number 10. The casting of Cooper Hoffman as Ray and David Johnson as Peter was done very early in development, and that tells you how central their relationship is to the movie. Ray is our emotional anchor. He's not the strongest or smartest walker. He's just a kid who keeps going. Cooper Hoffman plays him with this quiet exhaustion that builds slowly, making his suffering feel real instead of theatrical. McVries, on the other hand, is sharp, sarcastic, and self-aware. David Johnson gives him a kind of intellectual detachment, like he understands how insane the walk is, but chooses to play along anyway. What makes their dynamic work is contrast. Ray survives by not thinking too much. McVries survives by thinking constantly. And as the walk goes on, you start to feel that one of those approaches is going to fail. Their bond becomes the emotional spine of the film. As other walkers drop out violently, Ray and McVries are what keep the audience invested. Without that connection, the movie would just be death after death. With it, every loss hurts more. Number 11. One detail the movie keeps completely faithful to the novel is that there are no female participants in the walk, and that absence isn't accidental, it's thematic. The walk is framed as a brutal test of masculinity. These boys are raised in a society where proving yourself means suffering in public without complaint. It's about being tough, being useful, and being disposable. By excluding women entirely, the story focuses on how young men are conditioned to accept violence as normal, even honorable. They're cheered on, filmed, celebrated, right up until they're executed. The lack of female walkers also makes the walk feel more ritualistic, almost like a twisted military tradition. It's not about fairness or equality, it's about control. The state decides who is allowed to participate and who is allowed to die for entertainment. Number 12. One of the most disturbing aspects of The Long Walk is that, despite the rules, the boys often help each other. They share water. They support injured walkers. They talk each other through pain. And that's horrifying because the walk is designed so that only one of them can survive. This creates a constant moral tension. Every kind act is also a delay of the inevitable. Helping someone means you might be helping the person who eventually outlasts you. What the movie does so well is show how human connection doesn't disappear just because the rules demand it. Even in a system built on death, people still reach out to each other. Number 13. One noticeable difference in the movie is how present and tangible the Major feels compared to the book. In Stephen King's novel, the Major is almost mythological, distant, untouchable, more symbol than man. He's always there, but rarely confronted directly. He represents authority in its purest, coldest form. The movie pulls him closer. We see him more often. We hear him speak. We watch him observe the walk like it's a controlled experiment. And that shift is deliberate. By grounding the Major as a real person, the film removes the comfort of abstraction. Number 14. One of the most unsettling elements the movie expands on is the crowd. Spectators line the roads, cheer, cry, and place bets. Parents bring children. People wave signs. The walk is entertainment, a cultural event. What makes this disturbing is how normal it feels. The crowd isn't portrayed as evil or sadistic. They're excited, curious, emotionally invested. And that's the point. The walk survives because it's normalized, because enough people accept it. The boys aren't just being watched. They're being consumed. By emphasizing the crowd's presence, the film shifts some blame away from the Major alone and spreads it outward. The system exists because people keep showing up to watch it. Number 15. Mark Hamill, who plays the Major, actually got Stephen King's personal blessing for the role. It wasn't just a formality either. King reportedly reviewed audition tapes and approved Hamill's interpretation before filming even began. Hamill has even said in interviews that knowing King liked his take gave him confidence to push the performance further. It allowed him to play the Major with this unnerving mix of charm and authoritarian control, the kind of person who could cheer while boys drop dead and still feel normal. Number 16. In the book, authority figures are often distant, almost symbolic. You know the walk is controlled, but you don't always see the mechanisms. The movie changes that. Soldiers are visible, disciplined, and ever-present, patrolling the roads in formation, armed and ready to execute anyone who falters. Some carry rifles, others monitor the boys with cameras. There are even tanks in the background in key sequences. It's not just about keeping the rules. It's about constant surveillance and intimidation. Every step the boys take, someone is watching. Visually, this turns the walk into something almost militaristic. The boys aren't just competing, they're under observation, like pawns in a psychological experiment. It's one thing to die from exhaustion. It's another to know you'll be executed immediately if you falter in front of the cameras. Number 17. Here's a quirky little behind-the-scenes tidbit during filming. The cast and crew kept track of each walker's elimination with Happy Death Day buttons. It sounds darkly funny because it is, but the idea wasn't to make light of death. It was a coping mechanism. Filming the walk is brutal. The actors were exhausted, walking miles every day, performing emotionally harrowing scenes, and dealing with a constant sense of dread. So, the buttons were a way to acknowledge progress, relieve tension, and bond as a cast. It's a reminder that sometimes, even in horror, the people making the movie need a little humanity to survive the process. Number 18. One of the things that really makes the movie work is how it spends time humanizing the walkers early on. They don't just march in silence. They talk about family, religion, dreams, and what they'd do if they won their wish. These conversations make the audience care about them, which makes each death hit harder. It's a clever way the movie translates Stephen King's internal storytelling to the screen. You don't need a voiceover to get inside their heads. You feel their fear, hope, and desperation through dialogue, expressions, and the way they look at each other. By showing relationships forming and breaking, the film turns a walking death game into an emotional experience instead of just a spectacle of exhaustion. Number 19. Another thing you notice immediately is the film's muted, almost drab color palette. Gray roads, dusty fields, faded jackets, and uniforms. It's visually monotone, which might seem boring at first, but that's the point. The walk is repetitive, exhausting, and oppressive, and the visuals reinforce that psychological weight. When a violent or dramatic moment happens, the palette makes it feel stark and intrusive. The contrast hits the audience more than gore or action ever could. Every frame constantly reminds you this world is bleak, hope is rare, and survival comes at a cost. Number 20. And finally, one point book fans noticed. The movie can't fully show all of the mental deterioration and hallucinations that Garrity and the other boys experience in the novel. On the page, you get inside their heads. You see creeping paranoia, hallucinations, and subtle mental breakdowns over days of walking. On screen, that kind of internal horror is trickier. You risk confusing the audience or slowing the story. So the movie focuses on exhaustion, tension, and visible consequences. You still get the sense of mental strain, but it's externalized, the way walkers stumble, argue, or collapse. It's a different kind of psychological horror, one that translates better to film while keeping the story tight and suspenseful. And that's a wrap. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.